Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com. Monday through Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 a.m. Pacific. Ray Flowers breaks it all down for you from a fantasy sports perspective.
Hello, everybody. What's going on? Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily here on the Elite Plus Network. My name is Justin Fensterman, and every Wednesday we're going to be hanging out, having a nice little fantasy football and other sports conversation as well. For those that don't know who I am, very quickly, we'll get the introductions out of the way. I'm seeing comments already come in right here on the Elite Plus Network, where you can hang out with me and Ray Flowers every single weekday, Monday through Friday, 12 p.m. Eastern. I've been with Fantasy Guru. Actually, today could be my 1-year anniversary. It's either today or tomorrow. I am the lead NBA analyst, and I also cover fantasy football for the site as well. So with that, I've got some content coming out a little bit later on, including the practice reports Wednesday and Thursday. I will have practice reports coming out in the evening, and then on Friday, you get the injury report, in which I will be updating it throughout the weekend. It's not just I submit it and go, see you later. No. We keep it updated because this is the place where winners win. We don't just submit things and then leave them. Yeah, if they're dated, that's one thing, but why let that become outdated? Because we've got action here on Thursday, on Friday. It's week 1, and we want to be in mid-season form as well. And I know a lot of you, by the way, have drafts that are still going to be coming up. So with that, we could still talk about it. I know that people still draft through week 1. I've seen it happen before. So that is what is going to be on the mind today, just some last-minute strategy. And with that, fun guest coming up here, the Bosco himself, Fantasy Guru's guard dog, Rich Maletto, going to stop by, and he's going to talk about some of the content that he is going to be putting up on the site throughout football season. Rich, you know as well, the Bosco, very into NASCAR, along with Sean Angle as well, and believe the Marlin just as well. So with that, looking at what we're going to be talking about for today, we have right here in a little bit, and I'll start to get a little bit more used to the technical side of things, really into the video aspect of it. I'm still kind of learning, but for those that can see it, here is what is on the agenda. Like I said, Rich is going to be joining us in just a little bit. Want to also point out our content landing page for every single week. And with week number 1, if you go to fantasyguru.com and you go to that content landing page, you'll see week 1 content. It has everything. It has links to all of our content right there for all of you. So you're not having to scroll up and down every time something is posted. You will see it linked, and then you will be able to click on said link and get to enjoy and get ready for your fantasy football matchups. And I saw them when I was on the content page before that you've got the practice reports all labeled as to what to expect to see, because I think that's very important, getting into a routine. And that's with fantasy football. It's very easy to get lazy. And let me tell you all something right now about being lazy. Fantasy football isn't easier. That's not what it is. That's not how we have to view it. We treat it like a part-time job. We get part-time results. We treat things here like a full-time job every freaking day, looking at our opponents every freaking day, looking on that waiver wire, watching our teams, not falling asleep for 2 days after the games. We're not doing that. We don't do that here. That's how you get lazy. That's how you get off to a bad start. And also that works the other way too. When a player gets hurt, for instance, that doesn't mean you just sell your team just like that. There are ways that you could get around it. And Rich Maletto is going to stop by and talk to us about those ways here. So we're going to be talking to him about that. Also, some of the most invested players I have, Jeff Nance hosts the Elite Sports Show on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, Monday through Friday, 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern. He's been talking about that as part of his top 5s, and make sure you check in there. Only live, but hey, you can check it out on demand with the all-new SiriusXM app as well. Whenever you want these shows, that is when you get them. So with that right there, besides that, I got a little future I'm going to give a little bit. I'm going to give a FENSTY'S football future that's going to transition into a FENSTY future at the end of every single show. Something else that I've talked about that a lot of you have asked me about, because I'm going to be digging into our fantasyguru.com Discord channel. And while doing that, I'm going to be looking at those topics that you're asking me about. And I believe it was a few weeks ago at this point already. Man, that training camp, that was so much fun, very educational for everybody out there. My section of training camp was auctions. And I know it's a little late for the most part now, as a lot of your drafts are done, but this is something that you should absolutely consider for next season. And I've said it a bunch of times, and that's because your team has the ability to have better talent opposed to where you're drafting in a snake draft where you're stuck at the draft position, hard to get to first-round caliber talent. So I'm going to go over for those that might have an auction tonight, because I've been asked about budgeting, and I'm going to get into those strategies too. And also talk about which could be good for you who are in snake drafts tonight, because some of you are like, well, Fensty, what good is that going to be for me? Because I've got my snake draft. Well, I'm going to talk about some of the players that I'm seeing go at a lower value in auctions, maybe can translate a little bit on the snake draft side too, and talk about some of my most invested players. Hello, everybody out there. I see Greg, you're there. Michael, you're hanging. Angela, look at Armando Marsal, fresh off the stream last night, the roster coach stream that he was on, along with Russell Clay. Tyler Beaker was hanging out with them. And big topic, and I know Armando joined Ray yesterday to talk about Jamar Chase, but we are all waiting for this guy. And it's becoming a little bit scary. We've seen situations go all the way down to the 11th hour, but it's not just getting him signed. It's what has he been doing? What hasn't he been doing? We don't know. I mean, we're not seeing him participate. We're seeing him hold in. We're not seeing him participate in practice. So with not being able to participate in practice, we don't know what kind of working out Jamar Chase is doing on the side. So as someone who is sitting with Jamar Chase, and it's my own fault, in guillotine leagues, not redraft, but in guillotine, and we can assume and we can think positively that everything is going to be okay. I mean, Jerry Jones made those comments weeks ago about CeeDee Lamb. We're not rushing to get him signed. I'm sure that freaked a few people out. Then he got signed. With this situation, I'm more concerned about week one, and especially for those that are in guillotine leagues, which for those that are unfamiliar with guillotine leagues, they are a lot of fun, but your season can end after 1 week. Just ask Phil Backert. He knows exactly what that's like as he runs his guillotine league, and that's how I got into them as well. You have about 19 of your friends spanning the 18 weeks, and you all are drafting. So you're in a 19-team league, so you're not going to really end up with a lot of talent. Each week, the lowest score gets eliminated, and those players go back into the waiver pool and everybody bids on them. So as the season goes on, your team naturally gets better, or it should be, as long as you're surviving and making the cut. And so with what I did, not as worried about it, but now I'm starting to be a little bit worried, not really about the contract, but about Jamar Chase's condition, his physical condition going into week one. I don't know if, let's say, things work out and he plays, is he going to be on any kind of limitation just to make sure he avoids those soft tissue injuries? That's going to be tough right there. And I'm not saying, this is not me saying he gets signed and to bench him. This is me just saying, as someone who has him as the second overall pick in a guillotine league, that's not good. Need Jamar Chase to be at his ceiling. Need Jamar Chase to be 100%. Need him to get signed. Let's not advance. Let's go to point A to point B for a second. Ruby, no NBA jersey today. No, I want it to look a little bit nice. Maybe when it starts to be NBA season, I'll mix in a jersey here and there with sleeves. And by the way, for those that are familiar with my voice and my face, I'm sorry that you have to deal with me on camera now. You've had to deal with my blaring voice, which a lot of you seem to like. Now you get to deal with the face, so I feel bad, actually, for all of you. So no NBA jersey today, trying to look classy for the Elite Mafia, but that can change as the season goes on. So that's why when it comes to someone like Jamar Chase, we're all waiting on news and reports, and hopefully I have an update for you in my practice reports. And a lot of the practice reports are really injury related, but at the same time, with some of the top players like Jamar Chase, contract issues too are going to be part of that. And what I do, just so you know, for those that are a little unfamiliar, it's not just me listing injuries and that's it. I'm trying to write a little bit of a fantasy impact, fantasy potential, fantasy second option for all of you out there to start looking at maybe on your waiver wires if we're figuring out that Jamar Chase is not going to be playing week 1. I mean, that's something that we can't be blind to at this point. It's something that we have to make sure that we're focused on. So that's why for me, as of right now with Jamar Chase, I'm nervous. I'm hoping that something gets figured out. And I'm hoping beyond that, once that happens, there's no kind of limitation right there. So that's the Jamar Chase update. There is no update right now, but we're all waiting with bated breath here. But that's something to at least think about too. So with that right there, let's talk about a couple of players that I'm most invested in, because these are the guys, for those that are drafting, that I'm seeing go at a decent point. When I say decent, I'm talking that 9th, 10th round area and later. And I've got 2 players for you guys. The first is Jake Ferguson, because I've actually been out for the most part in my leagues of that top tier tight end pool. And it's not that I've closed my mind to it. I used to. Now I'm a little bit more open-minded, especially because I do a lot of fantasy football auctions. And with that, the pricing's a little wonky. So for me, I would say my most owned player, not tight end, but player, Jake Ferguson. I mean, you're looking at a guy right here who is getting about, 24% red zone targets. He was about 70% of the target share. And I'm totally fine with that. And I'm totally fine with drafting him in that 9th round. It's right before that Dalton Schultz and Pat Freiermuth. I've gone on shows and I've said that I'm fine with those 2 as well if you're waiting on later. But Ferguson's kind of like my sweet spot. Ferguson's right there. Not too much competition. Look who's throwing him the football. And I feel like, especially with those red zone targets that I'm expecting from him, 23% in there, he's going to be in there again a lot. And we saw the improvements there. And that's why I'm fine with drafting him in that 9th, 10th round. I think it's a very fair value. You see some players that are mentioned again and again and again by different fantasy analysts. Those players starting to climb up the ADP charts. Not this guy. This guy has stayed exactly where he's at. And somebody else, by the way, that I'm heavily invested in is Gus Edwards, because I want a couple of pieces of that Chargers backfield. Not only going to throw, but they're going to throw a lot as the Chargers start to figure out what exactly they have in their talent pool. Far different from last season. With Gus Edwards, though, he didn't run that well last season compared to the other seasons. Still ran for over 4 yards per carry. That's my baseline. But when I'm seeing seasons where he's running for over 5 yards per carry, in the Chargers O-line, I want to say, if I had to put them in a spot, they're not right in the middle of the league. I'd say they're in that upper half, maybe in that 10 to 13 range. So he's going to have that protection. He's going to get those carries. I think it's going to be him early. Dobbins being used sparingly. Vidal kind of hanging out there. So we got to see how the carries are going to be divided. But this is one where I'm not building my teams with drafting one stud like a Jonathan Taylor, who I have a lot of, and then I'm good. I'll just get LA's back. No, you can't do that. I used to be that kind of guy. I used to try to get the value and squeeze as much as I can. It's like squeezing the toothpaste out of the container. You don't want to buy new toothpaste. So you keep twisting it, boom. You're trying to get that toothpaste out. That's a weird reference, but that's kind of what I'm trying to get. You squeeze the life out of that value, but just be careful, because just because you can get a backfield in the double-digit rounds, that doesn't mean that you make that essentially your second or even third running back. Wouldn't do that. I did that 1 year with Tampa Bay with Ronald Jones and Peyton Barber. Knew that they were going to run, didn't know who it was going to be. Both were going at around the same time. Very similar situation to Edwards and Dobbins. And then I drafted both of them in multiple leagues, and it was hell. Literally hell every single. We got a little bit more depth, but that depth got hurt. And that's something else as we get into the season we should talk about. don't be a pessimist, but expect a player on your team to get hurt and to be out for weeks. If you come to accept it, it will make you focus more because it's football. Body parts aren't supposed to bend certain ways for a reason. And I'm not saying anything out of the blue. I'm just saying be prepared. Always be prepared. You could think you have the best team and the deepest team in the world. All it takes is 1 week to take 3 of your players out. Your team is down a major chunk of depth. And that's why you got to always be prepared. Always be prepared for those injuries right there. Should I trade Puka for Jamar Chase? Obviously, Jeb, and by the way, I'm going to take your questions and comments on the side too. Here's the key though, kind of like how I run the radio shows. I'll try to get to some of your questions right at the end. But if they're on topic questions, for instance, like Jeb, I'm talking about Jamar Chase. He asked about Jamar Chase. Then I will stop and take those questions here. So in a standard here, as Jeb is asking, should I trade Puka for Jamar Chase? I'm fine with that. I think a deal is going to get done. Let's just say that he's limited week 1. Okay, you suffer for the week. But this also, by the way, Jeb, everything is depth related too. So if you at this point are not that deep, you might want to be a little bit careful. You can make up for it on the waiver wire. And at least we know he's going to be out there. With Chase, we don't know that for certain. We'd like to think so. Even if a deal gets done, might be in a limited capacity. But even if he's on the field for a limited capacity, then Jamar Chase being on the field, we don't know what that's going to translate when it comes to any kind of snap count. And this is us just thinking about what happens when and if he signs. So with that question, Jeb, if I would make that trade, but you might have to take the hit in week 1, that's where I stand on that. By the way, still talking about drafting early and late, it's funny because I'm seeing what Angelo is saying, and this is why drafting early can have its advantages at times. Worthy in the 13th round, Angelo, that's pretty good there. That's something you were not getting. And then all of a sudden, while I'm out there at the Fantasy Football Expo in Canton, Ohio, Marquise Brown gets hurt. And he goes, that's how it goes. It's like the stock market right there. So those are a few answers to your questions. And by the way, if I don't get to your questions, make sure you go to our Fantasy Guru Discord. We've got a lot of chats going on. We've got people always in there. We're doing multiple streams this year and this show every single day during the week. There's a lot of resources. And if you have friends that want to become members of the Elite Mafia, that is where you enter when you go to fantasyguru.com. You will learn something this year. And it's about becoming better at fantasy football so you can learn the process. And that's one of the things from working with Jeff Manns for as long as I have. And I've worked with guys like Jeff Manns, Ted Schuster, and Ray Flowers for about 13, 14 years on and off, even though this is just the end of year 1 for me at Fantasy Guru. And one of the things I've learned from them, even back in the day, the importance of the process and learning the process. And if you really don't know what you're doing, you read all that content, you will be by the end of the year. I'm telling you, I was that person. I was mainly a basketball guy for a long time. Then I started to really read the importance of watching these games, schemes, all the inner workings of these teams that we provide at fantasyguru.com. And I love what I read. It gets me more into the sport every single time. Every single time. I mean, Jeff Manns will have his rankings out. He'll have his cash game breakdown too. And that's why you got to make sure that you not only listen to Elite Sports on Fantasy Sports Radio today and all week at 3 p.m. Eastern, you'll also be able to hear Jeff at 11 a.m. Eastern for football weeks on Sunday mornings, along with Bob Harris on Fantasy Sports Radio Channel 87. And you also, with Jeff, get the One Man's Opinion podcast where he talks a lot of football. So there are a lot of ways to learn. You put your head down, you don't get lazy, you're going to become better at this. A lot of people say that, but we're about teaching the process here. So that's something that I'm going to say off my soapbox sermon over at this point. I just want everybody to become better. And sometimes by just getting the answers, getting the picks themselves, and then moving along, it's not making you a better fantasy player if you don't necessarily know what you are doing. Let's talk about auctions before we welcome in the Bosco, Rich Maletto here. And with auctions for me, with what I've tried to instill, and I did an entire training camp session on auctions, but I've summarized into my unpatented or not patented 5-point plan. For those that have seen Fast Times at Ridgemont High before, you might know about my auction 5-point plan. And this is a plan that I go into all of my auctions with. I do a lot of prep. It's a lot of being comfortable with overpaying for players, knowing you're going to make up for them on the back end. A lot of issues I feel like some of you at the site have faced were budgeting issues. I didn't budget enough for this position. And that's why you got to be careful when you put hard cap specific budgets on players. That's why I do ranges. Ranges allow you to be able to go higher for the players that you want. That's why auctions are so great. So the first point of the 5-point plan, you can make a list of 12 players. 12. Write a dollar amount. And if this is your first time, you go to fantasyguru.com. If it's your first time in an auction, you'll see auction coverage there. You'll see strategies from Ray Flowers. You'll also see values from Armando Marsal. And you don't necessarily have to use those values as this, it must be this dollar amount. Use it as a range. Armando has someone at 47. You really want the player? Go freaking 52. Do it. That's why auctions are so great. You can make up so many guys, so many receivers for your bench that you could get when you're in dollar days. Standard $200 budget. I don't have that kind of hard cap for any position, except for defense and kickers. Now, what I'll do is maybe I'll throw out the top defense and hope that it goes for $3 or $4. I've seen it happen a bunch, but that's important. Every dollar means something in an auction. So if I can get it out, if I get 3 out right there from a team defense with 98% of them going for $1, I'm going to do that. But number one, you write that list, you set the dollar amount, and you add a +5 valuation to each player on your list. Because if you really want a player, you go after that player. That's the beauty of auctions. You want CeeDee Lamb and Christian McCaffrey? Probably going to cost you somewhere near $120, $125 of your $200 budget. Wow, 2 players taking over 50% of the budget. That's okay. You'll make up for it. There's a drop-off, a major drop-off. I was just talking about guys like Gus Edwards and even a Najee Harris, who you know is going to get utilized. Najee Harris, I've gotten in auctions for $15 in a $200 budget, and I got him for $11 in another. That's what I mean. Guy like Najee Harris, volume. Not having to spend $50 for him. So you can make up for it. That's why I'm bringing up those players. And having the list in front of you makes you feel comfortable because that auction room is very, very intense. And to have the players right there, seeing is believing, and it will help your mentals. A lot of this is your psyche. A lot of this is psychological. I can't put it into numbers. I'm not Freud. Far from it. But I can tell you from all of my experience in fantasy auctions that this is what I normally see. Something else that I see. Nominate the players you don't want early, then switch it up mid-auction. Get money off the board. You're not planning on going after a top-end tight end? Put Laporte out there. Put Kelsey out there. Get money off the board. Exception. In your randomized nomination order, you have, let's just say, a top 3 or top 4 bid, first 4 bid, then you put someone out there. I've noticed tentative spending. And because I've noticed that people are a little tentative, they want to see the first few players that say want to dip their toe into the water before jumping in, you jump in. Put out a player if you have one of those first 4 bids and get that player likely at a lower value. People are timid. It's just how they are. They want to see. It's kind of like when we were in school. And the teacher would be like, okay, who's presenting first? And no one would want to present. Well, often, even if the teacher didn't tell you, at least from my experience, you present first, you get a little extra credit. It's kind of like that here. Get a top end wide receiver and running back on your teams. That's pretty standard. And that's why you're doing an auction, because you have the ability to do so. So I have a top tier or two wide receiver. Same with the running back. I'm feeling good. With me, if you're starting 3 wide receivers, that's where maybe you put a little bit more emphasis. I've been going wide receiver heavy for the most part because of the running back drop off. I've felt comfortable enough, and I haven't been aced out of my positions at all. I've been very cool, calm, and collected about it. So that's why for me, I'm fine with putting a little bit more towards wide receivers, because remember, you're required in a lot of leagues to start 3 wide receivers and 2 running backs. That's important. That's important. You don't need to grab 8 or 9 running backs necessarily. If you're only starting 2, just remember that. Don't forfeit the position or anything like that. But don't feel you have to check boxes like that. But for me, I want to make sure I'm in the bidding on 1 high-end wide receiver and 1 high-end running back. And I'm talking about guys that are going in the first couple of rounds. That's something that's very important to me. Number 4, this one, probably one of the more important ones, but not really thought about. Don't intentionally hold the hammer. What that means is don't intentionally not spend just to wait for everybody else to not have as much money, and then you start spending. Few reasons. Number 1, it's going to ace you out of the tiers of the players that you want if you intentionally wait. Oh, I can get another player later, but then later comes and other people have a high max bid. You'll likely also have somebody else in the league that'll have a budget similar to yours, knowing they need to get players, and you're going to be in a constant bidding war for overpriced mid-level talent. I've seen it happen. I've experienced it. I used to be that guy. I used to think I was fooling my league, and I realized I was the one that was being foolish. So that's why when it comes to auctions, make sure that you spend that money, and don't leave with money as well, unless your league has a rule that money goes to waivers, which I don't mind, but that has to be set up beforehand. If it's not, spend the money. Keep a high max bid though. And that's where something else that you have to remember for auctions, you got to keep that high max bid. And when I say a high max bid, when you guys are getting down to dollar days, I'm talking about a $5 max bid for one of the sleepers that you want to draft a little bit late that others might be waiting on, because you might have to immediately put that 5 spot on there just to make sure that it sends some of your other league mates away and doesn't have them bidding against you. Because if you're constantly getting bid up, that max bid isn't going to help you much. Starting, though, not with the dollar, but maybe with the max bid towards the end. I've seen a lot of success in that. And then finally, the 5th point, don't spend double digits on tight ends or quarterbacks if you don't have to. For instance, let's talk about quarterbacks for a second. And this is in snake drafts too. In quarterback, you have guys like Jordan Love, Joe Burrow, who I'm seeing go for single digits in auctions. Those guys going down a board a little bit when it comes to drafting. Kyler Murray, Dak Prescott. There are a whole bunch of quarterbacks. Kyler Murray has gained a little bit of steam. But those guys right there, you'll be able to get for single digits. So those are the 5 points right there for auction summed up. I did a whole hour on this for training camp, but it's also important because I know some of you are drafting tonight. But when it comes to that quarterback spot, and I'll talk about why I love Jordan Love, pun intended, a little bit later on. But somebody else who I also love very, very much here, who's joining us right now on Fantasy Sports Daily, it is Rich Maletto, who's stopping by. Rich, what's going on, man? How's everything?
What's going on, Fensty? Everything's, hey, it's football. It's week 1 of football season, man. How can anything be going bad?
Rich, I assumed you're parked right now and you're being safe. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, good.
I closed all the windows I could to try to darken as much as possible, but I am parked next to a dilapidated building where I have the best Wi-Fi or signal that I've been able to find when I've driven around. So this is my little cubbyhole spot that I sit in when I talk to Ray in the past.
Well, there you go, Rich Maletto, who is, by the way, and I call him jokingly, but not so jokingly, the guard dog of fantasyguru.com, because Rich cares about the site A ton, and we all do, but there's something about Rich defends the site, any of our analysts, or let's just say getting picked on by the bullies of Twitter. You know, the guard dog, Rich Maletto at Fantasy Bosco, is going to be there. And that says a lot, Rich, about your loyalty. And when I met you in 2022, immediately those vibes I had with you, just how loyal of a person and awesome that you are.
Well, I really appreciate that. I've been told that no matter what you question, I'll be out there in left field at times, or I'll say something that's so deep that has you really thinking in. But bottom line is I trust my heart. I lead with my heart. And when you come after people I love and care about, it's gloves are off, man. That's just kind of how I roll.
So, Rich, talk about, because we also know you as such a NASCAR guy. You, Sean Angle, I believe the Marlin getting involved as well in there. Mark Hogan. You do so much with NASCAR, but you also do a lot with fantasy football too. So, for the season, what content pieces are you going to have being posted on the site per week, and when are we going to be able to see those pieces?
So we collectively do a group dive, if you will, into all the games. We all take over a couple of games and write it up. Russ kind of leads that. So I'll have some game summaries, if you will, that'll come out Monday. I have a buy, cut, sell article that's kind of, it's catered around trading, targets to trade, targets to, potentially trade away. People also like to hear some cuts because it's always tough during waiver time. We have that come out a little bit earlier in the day. I believe that's going to drop on Tuesdays, probably because I always have a waiver wire brain, and so there was always things people were taking out of that article and using it for their waiver ads. So we'll have that. I do a weekly streaming article that comes out on Wednesdays. That's already dropped. Rob got that out there for me, so thank you, Rob. Really appreciate it. He always makes my stuff look nice, man. He has like this
the
magical touch. Yeah, Povia is fucking. I mean,
most patient person at the site. Let me tell you. This guy, Rob Povia, big shout out to him, does a lot of the editing, had to deal with me because I was talking, Rich, before about how I do the practice reports and the injury reports. But here's the thing. I don't get a lot of news until right around that deadline. And I'm sitting there and it's all this news starts funneling out just like that. And then I had to hand it in a little bit late, but he was always very patient with me as he is with all of us.
If you communicate with him, he will move mountains for you. Like I have so much love and respect for Povia. I can't even describe it. And he tolerates me. Most of the staff tolerates me more than they probably should. So hat tip to them. But yeah, he's always making my stuff look fantastic. So he's already got that out there. The streaming article, that's based on really low bottom of the barrel. We're scraping to get by. We've got injuries. We've got challenges. We're trying to find a body to not get us a zero. Maybe flash in the pan for 1 week. So that's kind of what the weekly streamers are. That's probably my favorite article to do, to be honest, Vincey, just because I feel like you really got to dig deep. Like you've got to be willing to take some chances and stick your neck out there and make some calls that a lot of people won't make. So I enjoy that. And then the big one drops on Friday. That starts sit. One of the things I like to do for that, hit us up in Discord, tag me. You're not going to get an answer right away, but if you tag me with some difficult start sit questions, I compile a whole list on Thursday night. I pull all the news I can, all the injury reports I can, and then I basically do a ranking list based off of that. I update it, and I'll take questions on Saturday because we always got more injury news. I have to drop the start sit article before Friday injury news happens, so I know the pain you're talking about, Fancy, where you're trying to get in before the deadline, and all of a sudden there's like all this new injury report hitting, and you're like, I can't go rewrite the whole article right now. Like, I'm going to have to, stop it, get it out, and I'll do an update. So Friday, Saturday night, I do an update on that. I did a little bit of a voice chat last year on Saturdays here and there. That was kind of popular, so I might do that again if time allows. During the race season, it's tough because I do have the NASCAR overview and I hop in the Discord. But DFS Marlon, Mark, and Sean have really been carrying the torch here the last few weeks on that, so hat tip to them. I have a hard. I don't know how you do it, Fancy, with the compartmentalizing of the sports, because like I'm all in on something, like heart, both feet in. I'm there on NASCAR. I'm feeling it. And when I've got to hit that switch to go to football, it's a process for me. And I really struggle staying in tune with the NASCAR stuff. So my hat goes off to all you guys that are doing more than one sport, because I tell you what, it's not easy.
No, it's not, but it involves a lot of work. And look, at the end of the day, and I think a lot of us, all of us can say this at the site, we're writing sports for a living. And
True.
no disrespect to what anybody else does, but at the end of the day, if we have to spend those extra few hours there to do so, to make sure that we can maximize our potential in the sports that we cover, because hey, guess what, Rich? In a month and a half from now, I'm going to be in the same boat as you. I'm going to be doing DFS NBA, NBA betting, and I'm going to be putting out there those practice and injury reports. We just got to get it done, man, because this is the place where winners win. And that's a phrase that I'm keeping close to the heart right here. And that winning's not just picking the winners, it's learning and imploring that process and teaching our subscribers, our audience at the Elite Mafia, how to win using said process, which is something that I talked about. Because, Rich, I'm more old school. When I joined this industry in 2010, there were still a lot of long-form content, which I know you like to write, and a lot of our analysts do, and everybody was reading every single word. The new generation is not like that, but I still believe that learning the process ultimately gets you those long-term wins rather than the quick fix.
And I like to read the long form, man. I can't lie. I'm starting to warm up to videos, but I'll be the first to admit, Finsty, you know, when like, what was it, CBS or Fox said we're getting away from writing content, it's all video or whatever. I basically was like, well, I'm not going there for any information. I'd rather skim or read an article in 5-10 minutes that I can do at my pace than sit there and turn on a video that I know I have to watch for the next 15 minutes, right? I can start the article, and if I only get halfway through and my phone goes off for a work emergency, so be it. I go back to where I was, and I pick up where I left off. It's easy to make notes. So I'm like you, man. I still carry notebooks. I just dug out a brand new notebook for this weekend. So, you know, call me crazy, but I still use a pen and paper, man.
So how tough was it for you week one to write your streaming article, which is posted on the site, by the way, because it's week one?
There's a lot of guessing, right? That's a great question.
I check your quarterbacks that you put there, and I immediately go and I go and see, okay, who could possibly be injured? But the quarterback position is fine. So
right.
What's good about you for streamers, for those that might be in super flex leagues, let's just say, even though I'm sure a lot of those quarterbacks are drafted, it at least gives an expectation that you're expecting big things from certain quarterbacks. I mean, who is one quarterback that you'd be cool streaming? Let's just say, hey, let's say something happens to one of our starting quarterbacks, God forbid, in practice. Now we need to rush to the waiver wire. Who's someone that you're seeing that's out there that could play hero week one?
If you have this luxury, Baker Mayfield. Now, I don't have Baker. I only have him kind of mentioned in the article because the streaming article, I try to keep under 30%, 20% ownership because it's meant to be bottom of the barrel, right? Baker's more of a waiver wire ad. But I got to tell you, at 30%, he's available in a lot of leagues. Obviously not super flex. Probably not anyway, but in 1 QB leagues. Look, the Commanders defense was terrible last year. Do I think Dan Quinn will get them turned around? 100% I do. But it's week one. I'm not expecting Dan Quinn to make miracles over the first week. We saw that with Dallas. It wasn't the first 2-3 weeks where everyone's like, man, Dan Quinn's got this defense turned around. It was later on in the season. It takes time to understand his schemes and processes. The game's got to slow down. People are too busy reading, learning, you know, where they need to be and how to get, you know, take in the reads. So I like Baker if you have that luxury, but I don't think a lot of people have that luxury, especially in a super flex league. I think you have to consider the bottom of the barrel guys that nobody wants to start. I start off with Daniel Jones and Sam Darnold. The Giants defense was a struggle last year. Sam Darnold, for whatever reason, has flashed the first 3-4 weeks of a season. And then it's like they get him on film, they see his tendencies, and they get him confused. So for the first couple of weeks, we might have the luxury of being able to lean on Sam Darnold. The Giants defense, they made some improvements up front, but they still have some questions in the secondary. It's still a work in progress. They were definitely one of the worst last year. So I think you have to consider Darnold as much as I'm like trying to not puke in my mouth as I say this, right? I mean, it's tough. Daniel Jones is another one. Now, Daniel Jones on the other side, I think the Vikings defense is going to be decent. I love what Brian Flores does. He made huge improvements on this Vikings defense. Nobody thought he'd have them be top 15. I remember having debates online about this, and he absolutely did. Now it's another year. They've had some injuries, but he's also got some of his guys in. People are looking at the Vikings like they're just a crappy defense, and I don't know that they are. The thing about Daniel Jones is, though, One, I'm always off by a year. I'm kind of like Jeff Mans. I seem to be a year early. I was in on Jones last year. His rushing, look, there's only a handful of quarterbacks that we can count on 500 to 700 yards rushing a year. Daniel Jones is one of those. So he offers a potential floor that a lot of these other quarterbacks don't, and he's less than 7% owned. He's available in Superflex leagues, Fency. I mean, that's mind-blowing to me. Like, if you're in a Superflex league, there should be no starting quarterbacks on your waiver wire. None. If there are, find a way to get them on your bench, because I'm telling you, by week 6, people are going to be hounding for those. They will overpay for a crappy Daniel Jones or Sam Darnold come week 8 that you just got for free, that you could turn around and get probably a starting running back for. Like, that's how it works. So get these guys on your rosters. Russell Wilson's consideration, Atlanta's defense was ho-hum. I'm a little mixed on that one, because I think the Steelers are going to be run heavy. So I'd rather look at Darnold or Daniel Jones, even though that seems crazy. But, I mean, I'd be foolish to not at least say you got to look at Russell Wilson. Again, 7% owned. He's available everywhere. And the Atlanta defense has holes.
By the way, Darnold, he might vulture a few scores. We've seen that before, too.
It's true.
So
it is.
He might, for whatever you get out of him, he might run in a couple of scores. I wouldn't be expecting that too often. But we saw that, I believe it was a couple of years ago, where he was running in scores. And that's how he was producing. Essentially there. The accuracy for Sam Darnold has never been eye-opening. It's never been good.
Right.
You talk about throwing up in your mouth. But still, this guy here, especially now in our leagues where you're having for the passing touchdowns, 4 points, rushing 6, I mean, that's where that's going to benefit big time. And to your point about how no quarterback in super flexes should be out there on your waiver wire, you are absolutely right. I was actually just in a draft where I went Josh Allen, second overall, by the way. McCaffrey was taken first in a super flex. So Josh Allen I got, and then
Nice.
Brock Purdy a couple of rounds later. And then I said to myself, you know what? I've got the 2, and I could probably sail for a few rounds. Those low-end quarterbacks start going one after another. And because I missed the major run, I ended up with a third quarterback, Jacoby Brissett, who, look, I could have passed on him. Right, he's starting for now. But still, that's the thing. You're absolutely right. And even with Brissett, am I planning on really ever using him? Hopefully not. Hopefully I don't have to. But at the same time, that's how quickly those low-end quarterbacks went off the board.
Vincey, I'll even go so far as to snag some backups on quarterbacks I have questions on, right? Like, I've rostered Sam Howell in a few leagues because I'm not sold on Geno Smith, quite frankly. And the offense that they want to employ there, Sam Howell's a good fit for. Like, he is actually an excellent quarterback for what they want to do. So I snagged him. I don't have a lot of faith in Deshaun Watson. Jameis Winston is a lot like Joe Flacco, and we saw what Joe Flacco did with this offense. As a dart throw into the draft, if you've got room on your roster, in Superflex, I'll roster some backups, man, because, again, by week 8, those guys they're on the waiver wire. People are paying 70% of their budget to get them. Last year we had, 8 to 12 starting quarterbacks go down with significant injuries. Fancy, that's a third to almost a half of the league. Like, someone's got to play the position.
No, you're right. And that's where in those leagues, depth is very, very important. By the way, I got to ask you something totally unrelated, Rich. Are you a Ryan Reynolds guy at all?
Oh, I am. I think I tweeted out like a couple weeks ago that I think we can't call him a national treasure because he's from Canada, but I got to tell you, he's a treasure. What can I say?
I'll say that Scott Bonder, by the way, who is on the DFS MLB cash game breakdown. So make sure you go to the site. All you baseball players out there that are used to hearing everyone who's injured in the MLB under the sun. Well, this is Wednesday, and that's not how we're going to be doing things here on Wednesdays. So you could go to fantasyguru.com and get all the baseball that you can get here. Chris Rose on the GPP breakdown. We don't go to sleep here. Football's here. We know that. We know it drives the bus and pays the bills, but we still got your other sports rocking and rolling. Scotty B on that cash game breakdown. Scotty, let's get some dong detector home runs as well here. Let's all win. So I had to ask you. That's a nice compliment right there.
Look, I love
you're
Scott.
Van Wilder.
Oh my God, 7 years in college, man. If only, right? God, that
Dude,
movie. That is still one of my favorites.
My favorite role of Ryan Reynolds, by the way.
Well, it's perfect for him. I feel like that's him, right? Like, yeah. I mean, I can't ever see him in anything, and that's not the first thing I think of, right? So, and thank you, Scott. I appreciate the kind words, man. You know I love you, bro. Scott's one of my favorite guys. If there's anyone that tolerates me really well, Scotty's one of them, man. He's like, have at her. So,
but has he ever been to a Waffle House with you talking
No.
conspiracy theories at 12:30 a.m. Eastern in Canton, Ohio?
No, I was hoping. He was trying to make it to Canton this year and was unable to, because I had it booked, man. He didn't know it, but I was like, look, bro, at midnight we're going to Waffle House. Like, it's just happening, and we're grabbing FENSTY, and he's gonna have a hamburger and we're gonna eat breakfast.
Yes, exactly. Chris, thank you so much for the love. We really appreciate it. This is what you're going to get every single Wednesday, me and the Bosco right here. But Rich, circling back to your week 1 streamers article, which is right now out at fantasyguru.com. Let's talk about someone that you included in that, and that's with the ongoing Jamar Chase situation. Unless something's broken in the last 15 minutes, which I have not seen,
Neither
you actually write one of the darlings of draft season. But the difference is, while a lot of other people are writing this guy's a decent dart to go after late, you're seeing Yoshivas's name come up again and again and again. You're talking about him as a possible streamer, a different perspective. So with including Andre Yoshivas, is that more of a stash, or do you think that this guy, if Jamar Chase does not play week 1, this guy can actually see some legit action here?
I think it's a little bit of both, right? I mean, if Jamar Chase doesn't play week 1, what confidence do we have he plays week 2, week 3, week 4? Like, this is unprecedented territory. You and I have talked off air about this. We've heard Jeff talk about this. What's happening with Chase is different from Le'Veon Bell and the other holdouts where we've actually seen him hold out. He's under contract. Like, he is straight up locked in and under contract and is like, yeah, I just don't like my contract. Well, that's what the CBA agreed to a part of the rookie deal. So I don't know what to tell you, man. I don't see a good outcome here because they can fine him and they can do all this stuff. All that's going to do is create bad blood. I don't know what they do here, because if you just let Chase do what Chase is doing, that's not going to help anything. And it's kind of foolish for these players to think, well, I got 2 years left on my deal. I need to make the deal now. You're potentially jeopardizing 2 years of winning where they could have a solid team around you. So as much as I like Yoshivas as a dart throw in general, right? Yeah, I do think he's a valuable play. I think he took a hit because people were enamored with Jermaine Burton. I'm included. Burton's kind of in the doghouse right now. Let's not forget, Tyler mentioned this, Ayuk was in the doghouse too. So just because these players are in the doghouse doesn't really mean a whole heck of a lot. But for right now, today, as we sit here on September 4th, 3rd, 4th?
4th.
I'm not, if you ask me, am I certain Jamar Chase plays? No, I'm not. I'm down to probably 60%. FENSTY, like I'm
Bro,
starting
I have
to get
him in a guillotine league, man.
I do too.
League.
My first overall pick in guillotine league. I don't know what I'm going to do. Like
I'm losing more hair. I won this thing last year, which is so hard to win a freaking guillotine league.
Yes.
And this guy at this point, which I feel so stupid, I didn't go St. Brown, but who knew we'd be right down to the 11th and a half hour? You could be eliminated. You lose your first round pick week 1, you could be screwed.
This is unprecedented. And the fact that Yoshivas is only 2% owned, that's what really hit my radar, right? Like, if you notice, I only had about 3 players in each section. This article grows a little bit, ebb and flow with the year. Start off the year, obviously, I'm not going to put a whole bunch of names out there and have people fishing. You can see in Discord, I've already got people twisted up on Ray Davis. But the point being is, at 2%, he needs to be on our radar because it is not 100% certainty Chase plays. Someone is going to step up. Burton's in the doghouse. The next man up right now is Yoshivas. That there's no getting around it. He is. So if you have Chase, I'm adding him. I'm finding a way to put him on my roster. That may mean I got to cut someone like a Vidal. I don't like that idea, but these are the tough decisions. This is where the fantasy players, the cream rises to the top. You have to be willing to say things with your chest. You have to be willing to gamble and take some risk. You're going to be wrong sometimes, but you're going to be right. The best thing you can do is play your team. You know, people are all worried about, I'm going to grab this guy, I'm going to grab that guy. If you don't have Bijan and you didn't draft Algier, don't go chasing him now. It's too late for that. What did you do with your roster? Unless you got extra pieces that you can get rid of, then so be it. But right now, we should be protecting ourselves against Kyle Pitts with the report that just came out. We should be protecting ourselves against Jamar Chase. That doesn't mean we have to revamp everything. It may mean just make notes. Like, if you don't have a roster spot for, with Pitts, Don't do anything. Make a list of tight end prospects that are available, and let's wait and see if he gets moved to out, and then you have a free roster spot to add via IR. Sometimes the best move is not doing anything, but it's planning on what you want to do later, right? So for Oshavas, you've got multiple options to go. It's worth a bench stash if you got the room. If you got Chase, I think you better buy or pick up the assurance or the insurance, if you will. But look, Ray Davis is kind of in that same boat that I mentioned, right? Like an absolute stash. But I think he's got real playing time ability starting now. I don't think anybody wants to see James Cook with 20, 25 touches a game. I don't think that's good for him. I don't think anyone wants to see Josh Allen rushing for 15 touchdowns from the goal line. They don't need him getting hurt. Ray Davis can do both of those things. And I look, they didn't draft him to be a hood ornament.
No, they did not. Not at all. No. That, by the way, somebody else who's been focused on a lot as a late draft target, with where I'm seeing him get drafted. Not as much in the 14th and 15th, but seeing him more in the 12th, 13th. That's making a little bit of noise here as we track drafts from back in June all the way to now, not including best ball, by the way. I tried. This is where we now have enough data to separate best ball, which tends to go running back heavy, let's just say, versus redrafts. So, by the way, you're seeing the report. I have a feeling there's an angel named Ray Flowers that's being our news update anchor here. With that, they're with Kyle Pitts practicing in a limited capacity, which he will. Not something too crazy just yet, but we got to now wonder whether or not maybe he's going to be utilized a little bit less if he's not 100% there by game time. That's it. And just a little bit, because it's week one. We want all of our players to be at their ceiling. We don't want to deal with this crap right now, Rich, which is what we're dealing with.
This is midweek or mid-season Wednesday, right? Yeah. Like, I want to remind everybody, it's not uncommon to see a player on Wednesday limited.
Right.
It's a little weird week one is the only reason I'm saying have it on your radar. Don't do anything, but let's have it on our radar, because normally for week one, we've had plenty of rest up to this point. They're not looking to rest them on a Wednesday. Come week 6, Fancy, we're going to have, 80% of the players that we have drafted across leagues probably in a limited or out of practice role on a Wednesday because it's Wednesday.
Right.
I mean, that's the nature of it. So, again, there's no reason to panic. But if I have Kyle Pitts, I don't want to go into the weekend and then all of a sudden be like, crap, what am I going to do now? Right? I mean, at least have an idea. Hurts is out.
Thank God there's a week one streamers article on fantasyguru.com then.
Kobe Parkinson. I mean, Rob teed that up perfectly. Kobe Parkinson, nobody has talked about him. Nobody. For the last 2 years, people have been drafting Higbee as a top 12 tight end. The offense hasn't changed. It's the same quarterback. And nobody's talking about Kobe Parkinson when he's probably going to be the starter for the first 4 to 6 weeks. And what did I put in there? He's 3% owned. Like, there you go. Kyle Pitts, people, if you have a free spot, grab him. If you don't, just circle him on make a little note. Wait till Sunday. If Pitts goes, don't worry about it. If you got someone else that moved to IR and you're now concerned, grab them. But I am blown away that Kobe Parkinson's not on anyone. I feel like he's not on anyone's radar, and it blows my mind.
Rich Maletto was giving out a lot of great information here on Fantasy Sports Daily on the Elite Plus Network with me, Justin Fensterman. Taking over Wednesdays moving forward. You'll have Ray Flowers back Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Rich, I can imagine all the baseball people. I don't make baseball today. Too bad. Guess what? It's week one. This is what it's all about right here. Yes, we're doing a lot of baseball too. We do that. But at the same time, this right now is what is on our mind, making sure we are ready for week one. Very quickly, Rich, for those that are planning on maybe even streaming a defense, maybe some that weren't required to draft a defense went with an extra bench player to hang out with until their matchup begins. Is there a defense that you're seeing readily available that maybe we can take a shot on this week?
So I want to name 2 that may not be readily available, because if they are available to you, they're only rostered in 35% of leagues. That means they're available in a lot of them, have some prime matchups. And that's the Houston Texans against the Colts. I don't have a lot of faith in Anthony Richardson right now. I am very concerned about Richardson. So give me a defense that plays him. Daniel Jones, as much as I've kind of liked him and talked him up, he has been a turnover machine. I like what Brian Flores does. He gets his players to do his scheme. He does. He turned that defense around. That's a good one to look at. But they're both 35% owned. Now, if you need to really scrape the bottom of the barrel, look, the Buccaneers playing another rookie quarterback. I will target defenses playing rookie quarterbacks. The Titans aren't really owned. They're like 1% owned. The Bucs are like 3% owned. They're both playing rookie quarterbacks. Jaden Daniels, when I saw the little bit on Hard Knocks, he seems easily confused. So that is a guy that I will likely more target for a defense to play. Caleb Williams, I've warmed up to quite a bit. I've been a pretty big naysayer on Caleb Williams, but I really like what Tennessee's done on the defensive side of the ball. They have done some significant upgrades that people are kind of sleeping on, including on the interior at tackle there, backer, and in the secondary. So Tennessee might be a defense that nobody loves right now that come week 6, week 8 is going to be a hot commodity. So I'm willing to gamble on Tennessee Titans against a rookie quarterback, even though I think the Bears have it going on. I have high hopes for the Bears, but as a general rule, I will pick a defense against a rookie any day of the week.
He is the Fantasy Bosco, Rich Maletto. Rich, again, for those that might just be joining us here on this stream, what's yet to come for the Rich Maletto content stream for this weekend for football?
So we got start sit yet on Friday. I'll be in the Discord chat. We'll have a little NASCAR overview dropping later on Friday as well. But for football, I will be focusing on start sit. So heads up, you can tag me in Discord. I won't get you your answer today. I don't do start sits until Wednesday, and I only do that for Thursday football. I don't get the whole look. We get injury reports Thursday, Friday, Saturday. There is no need to rush to set lineups when you don't have to. Have an idea, follow along, watch, but you can tag me with your questions because I know it'll probably be a lot of the same guys we're looking at. Tag me. I do a search on Discord. I put a whole list together, and I will update it for Saturday as well. So you'll see an update. You'll see the article Friday and then a list update. And I think last year I started pinning that in the Discord as well, so it was easier for people to see.
Rich, we love everything you do, not only for football, but for NASCAR as well. You work so hard and just are an awesome freaking dude. That's all I can say, man.
Thanks,
thank
dude. That
you
means
so
a
much
lot.
for joining me, man, and parking your car and waiting to go to your next destination. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. I'm looking forward to every Wednesday. This is probably the motif you're going to get each Wednesday, so I hope it's all right.
Yeah, hey, in a parked car, I'm okay with that, Rich. So
I promise. I can even show I'm not moving.
Okay, good. As long as you promised, if a promise you don't keep, that saying. So I'm not going to just say.
No. If Jeff will back me up on this. If I tell you I'm going to do some, I'm going to do it.
Facts right there at Fantasy Bosco on X, and make sure you go to fantasyguru.com to find all Rich's work. Rich, thanks again, man. Good luck.
Thank you. Appreciate you, Fensty.
Rich Maletto, again, just such a great guy. We have such a great team, and getting to really learn and be part of this team for the last year has been a blessing. It's been very fortunate, and that's why we're here for all of you as well. Want to give my Fensty future before we head on out of here. Ray Flowers will be back with you at noon Eastern tomorrow and Friday for that matter. Make sure you catch Jeff Mans and the Elite Sports Show along with Ray Flowers 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. That's Sirius XM Channel 87. And my Fensty future is going to be one that I wrote up on the site a long time ago. When I say a long time ago, I mean weeks ago, and that is Jordan Love. I love Jordan Love. I mean, you had to after what you saw. You saw consistent improvement, just a steady increase of talent, accuracy. And when you're looking for a guy who was a top 10 finisher from a fantasy standpoint, a lot more of those weeks in the second half of the season. And you can also see from the completion percentage overall, he struggled the first few weeks, but then started to get over 60 and then even into the 70s in certain games by the time the second half of the season came about. His touchdown pass line is at 27.5, and I bet the over on that. 32 last year, and with that percentage, I mean, yes, are they going to utilize Jacobs? Yes. Is their offense still a solid passing attack over the last few years? Yes, it is. And even though we don't know necessarily who's going to be the prioritized receiver when it comes to Green Bay, the accuracy improvements that we saw from Jordan Love last year have made me go in on this even weeks ago on the over. So Jordan Love over 27.5 touchdown passes. I think he could get there and close to what he did to last year, maybe even better. We will have to see. Again, you can follow me on X at FENSTY'S Sports. And I also wanted to remind all of you about FENSTY'S Campfire chats, including the NBA conversations I've been having in Discord every other Wednesday. So tonight is an off night for the Campfire chats next Wednesday, and I'll promote it in the Discord at FENSTY_, by the way, in Discord if you need any kind of assistance, help, and always talking NBA as well. And with those chats, getting everybody ready for the season, talking futures, talking betting, DFS strategy. And that's where we say sports don't sleep when it comes to fantasyguru.com. I thank all of you for tuning in and all the love out there, and go to Discord if you did not get your questions answered. Ray Flowers will be back with you tomorrow, same time, same place, same channel, right here on the Elite Plus Network.